So what happens when the worst Christian on YouTube is a puppet?
Hold up. Wait a minute.
Well, first thing, I celebrate because it's not me. This video starts off pretty light, talking about the bad branding of how somebody could choose life. But it quickly blows up into a full-blown theological tangle between Christians, atheists, and a couple of puppets. But beyond all the jokes, that's where the real questions start to surface. Can the Bible be used to argue against abortion? Or is that just a stretch? Is the God of the Bible male? Or is that just culturally convenient? Does having a degree or a PhD actually mean anything? And who actually has the burden of proof when it comes to the God question? We cover all sorts of arguments for God's existence, and whether or not God did a bad job designing humans, and like so much more. But ultimately, this is why Reddit-based arguments just don't hold up anymore. But without further ado, let's get into the video. This one is titled, "The Worst Christian on YouTube is a Puppet." Y'all better come correct when you're talking about, I just forgot his name. I know this guy. I've talked to him. Oh my God. Is it Dinks? Dinks the puppet? Yeah, Dinks. Yeah. Okay. Also, buddy, bad name choice. Love you, but bad name choice.
To choose life.
You sure you weren't reading Trainspotting?
Choose life.
It is insane to take just the words choose life
Choose life.
from this passage about not worshipping other gods as an argument against abortion.
Because he
Okay. Yeah, so there's a simple argument that you can make, because the Bible doesn't talk about abortion, right? So it doesn't. But you can make a simple argument, right? The Bible condemns the death of innocent persons. To fetuses are innocent persons. Conclusion: the Bible condemns the death of fetuses. That's valid and sound, my friend. Valid and sound. Unless you're going to make the argument that the Bible does not condemn the death of innocent persons.
claims to have created life.
Prove him wrong.
That's not how this works.
In the 21st century, we shouldn't be using the Bible to determine when life begins.
Because somehow God is out of date?
I agree. We don't use the Bible to determine when life begins. We use science. Science tells us life begins at conception.
My specific canon is the one true word of God from time immemorial, and therefore it can never be out of date. That's why I still stone my children in the town square when they're being disobedient. That's why I...
Well, no, you'd have to bring them before, you don't just stone them, read the rest, right? You have to bring them before the court, and they're not just children because they're being disobedient drunkards. They're adults, and they're acting out in society. So you bring them before the council, and the council will decide the punishment. And again, the Old Testament are case studies. It's not a verbatim contract where you must do it by the letter of the law. It is a case study where they give you situations which may be the case, and they can give you punishments which you can go up to. I don't even really think that's contested anymore.
I don't wear mixed fabrics or eat pork. That's why I regularly perform ritual sacrifice and circumcise my children. Right, Dinks? Hello, lovely people. My name is Emma, and I have terrible
The New Testament tells us we don't have to circumcise anymore.
news. It has been brought to
Guards would bring them to the council. It still had to be brought forth before the council. If it was just stone them for being disobedient, you wouldn't need a council.
my attention that there is a Christian
John thinks kids can be drunkards.
YouTuber out there spreading a primarily anti-atheist agenda using
An anti-atheist agenda? I thought the whole point was that atheism wasn't a worldview. I thought the whole point was you guys didn't have an agenda. You just lacked belief in God. I thought that was the whole point. What do you mean anti-atheist agenda? What are you talking about?
a puppet. Who would dare use a puppet to spread their religious indoctrination? But do not
Lots of people.
fear, my friends, as a professional puppet lover and professional atheist, I am here to challenge this nonsense. As you could probably predict, we are going to deal with some intellectual dishonesty today, but I have just the thing to...
That's what they always claim, right off the start. Any Reddit atheist is always, they're lying, they're all lying, scree. Every time.
Now, if we're going to challenge the views of a puppet-based content creator, there's only one way to do it correctly. All right, folks, let's get down to business.
I appreciate that. Like, if you're going to go out a puppet, use a puppet. Like, I appreciate that. Do I have a puppet anywhere? I could put a sock on my hand.
On the topic of the patriarchy,
Oh, yay, my favorite topic. What you got?
Instant
God bless the patriarchy.
red flag when somebody has a negative reaction to just the word patriarchy, because it is just a word to accurately describe
Yeah, because everybody has a rhetorical goal when they bring up the patriarchy. When people bring up the patriarchy, it's usually used in the sense that they're trying to condemn or bring down men. So usually when you hear that word, you have like a visceral reaction to it. It's called like a trauma response, right? After certain things happen enough times, you have a response when it happens around you. It's not the word itself. It's usually around the rhetoric in which people use it. God bless the patriarchy and God bless America, said the Canadian. Let's keep going.
Anyway, let's just listen to what he has to say with that red flag noted.
Western religion has millions of people devoting their entire
Christianity is not a Western religion. It's an Eastern religion.
lives to a man
Who was
Near East, Middle East.
God? Okay.
I feel like this is one of the many Bible things, like almost all Bible things, which is up to personal interpretation.
It's not up to personal interpretation if that's been the standard for a long time. We have third century, I think it's third century, we found an inscription that straight up says that Jesus is God. And then looking at the Old Testament, looking at the New Testament, sorry, it's very clear that I believe that Jesus is God. There are some people that interpret that the historical Jesus, for example, Bart Ehrman has said that it's very possible that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the authors of the New Testament, believe Jesus is God. But he argues that the historical Jesus never actually claimed to be God, but the narrative of him being God expands over time. And then in the Gospel of John, it's not really contested. There's very few scholars that contest that Jesus is God in the Gospel of John, but they argue that that is a narrative that's developed over time. As you'll see, like in the Gospel of Mark, earliest is not as divine, but in the Gospel of John, he is more divine. And so they think it's a legendary myth development. I think there's problems with that, mainly because like if he's more divine in the Gospel of John, why is that the gospel he performs the least amount of miracles in? I think that's like a weird thing that happens. But yeah, it's not really up for interpretation. Like very few people argue that Jesus is not some sort of divine being in the Gospel of John. The type of divine being, that's up for discussion, but he is definitely divine.
Is God a man? He's not a human, and that's the origin of the word, right? But he is very specifically described as a male figure. A man is supposed to be the head of the household, and God is the head above that.
an omniscient
What does that have to do with anything? It was God took on flesh, you know. You had your Bible, it had all those notes in it, Philippians 2. Even though he existed in the form of God, he did not consider it something to be grasped. Therefore, he lessened himself and be found in the appearance of a man. Appearance of a man.
being in the sky that claims, via anecdotal text, to have created life and created the world as we know it.
Can you prove him wrong?
Wah, wah. Okay.
That's a bad response. You can't say, like, can you prove him wrong? I agree. That's a bad response.
Instantly, I'm so riled up, I'm going to take over for a second. At least for us now, we can be safe in the knowledge that we don't need to listen to anything Dinks the Puppet says on theology. If I wasn't making a video and I was just
Why don't you have to listen to it?
browsing the internet, that would be the moment where I say, okay, so this channel is pointless to watch. They're not intellectually honest enough to warrant listening to even. And you know, when I was
Or, you know, every once in a while, somebody has a bad take. Unless your like whole argument is that people need to have perfect takes all the time to be warranted actually giving the time of day. Then we'll have to examine your videos and see if all you have is good takes. I mean, if you do, congratulations, man. You're better than like all of us. Congratulations for being a superhuman.
scrolling through their page, I saw they ripped into this woman who happened to be an atheist who had a biblical degree. And they were super rude about her and demeaning about the fact that she had a biblical degree, but she doesn't interpret this part of the Bible the same way as me, you know. So it is.
Yeah, because degrees really don't mean jack shit. They really don't. Like, they argue with each other about the same things that they study. And they double back on each other a lot. Like, there's a lot of things that people have had degrees on that they so for example, there was like this argument that was in scholarship for a while that they got the geography wrong in Matthew and the way that Jesus traveled. Those were biblical scholars that argued that, and it was Christian apologists that pointed out, hey, you guys are wrong about this. And eventually the whole thing shifted, and it turns out that in scholarship they were actually wrong because they were really stupid and they didn't look at a typographical map. They just looked at a flat map and assumed that there was no mountains and no hills. But when they looked at the map, they actually saw there was mountains. And so they had to actually travel around the mountains. So the geographical location that Matthew used to describe where they would have traveled was more correct than the scholar saying, hey, they had to make shit up because this would have been the quickest way to travel. Scholars get shit wrong all the time, man. All the time. Now, here's also another problem with scholarship is very often scholars will have a degree in a specific field, and then all of a sudden they're an expert in all the fields of the Bible.
Now, granted, they're usually very intelligent and they will have more to say and know a lot more about those areas in the Bible than more laymen out there. But that doesn't mean a layman cannot study just as much as they studied about those areas of the Bible. So, for example, I don't want to mention names, but there's like specific people where all they do is study the Isaiah scroll. That's what their field is in. That's where their doctorate is in. That's what they know. So, like, talking about the New Testament, they probably know quite a bit about it, but that doesn't mean they're an expert in New Testament studies. There's certain people who have doctorates where all they do is translate, right? And that's their field. Gary Habermas, his degree is specifically in the resurrection. He's an expert in the resurrection. And they told him before he got his doctorate, before he wrote his, his dissertation, before he wrote his dissertation, it's like, don't write it on that because you're not going to add anything new. Just don't do it. And he went and did it. And he added so much new stuff, they had to give him his doctorate on it. So like, yeah, the scholarship is not what everybody thinks it is. And here's a scholar, Michael Heiser, the lay Michael Heiser, went on record with his, and he's an actual biblical scholar. He's got a degree in it. He's contended with biblical scholars. He went toe to toe with Dan McClellan. And he wrote that he thinks there's a huge problem in biblical scholarship. And the problem is they don't take logic classes, right? They don't know basic philosophy. They don't know basic logic. They know biblical scholarship. They know how to look at history, but they don't know how to like come to proper conclusions, use proper philosophy, use proper epistemology. So there's like a whole lot of messed up things happening. There's also another issue with biblical, I can go on for this for days. Another issue with biblical scholarship is that they're looking at the Bible from an historical perspective, but they're not applying the historical method upon it. This is something that another scholar, Tim McGrew, brings up as a contention in scholarship, is that they don't look at the Bible with the same criteria that historians look at the rest of history. They have a higher criteria with the Bible to achieve truth claims than most other things in history. So there's a whole bunch of issues with scholarship. You can't just appeal to somebody's doctorate on the wall. It literally, I wouldn't say it means nothing. It means a lot, but it does not automatically make you right. You can be wrong as a scholar 100% of the time.
You know what I wish I had, but I actually don't? I wish we sold like Big John Steel puppets over on my Patreon. Maybe we'll do that one day. But as for right now, if you want to support the channel, you could do so by finding our Patreon down below, where you'll get access to exclusive content, including our hangout sessions, our raids, and of course, just some content just for you. But more importantly, you'll get access to our daily Bible study, where we're currently going through the Gospel of John line by line, bar for bar. So if you don't want to miss that, I've already told you where to go. But without further ado, let's get back to the video.
If you start by misplacing the burden of proof, you do not have either the intellectual capacity or honesty to...
The burden of proof is on anybody who has a belief claim. You have a justification for it or you do not. Simple as that. If you believe X, you need a justification for believing X. Therefore, you have to be able to prove why you believe X. Doesn't matter what it is.
Also, while you can't definitively prove that some being that resembles the specific Christian God that Dinks the Puppet is talking about, because they seem to forget that their God is not the same as the many, many other gods that people across the world believe in and talk
I don't know what she's yapping about right now. Just that kind of seemed like out of left field.
about. You might not be able to disprove that something resembling that character was around at the start of creation and perhaps created the matter that then became the universe.
Yeah, so you're agnostic. You're not an atheist. Right? If you cannot make a claim, if you cannot make like the positive claim that that thing cannot exist or it's not logically possible with that thing that it can exist, if there is a being with like an unbound being that set everything for us in motion, that's the top of the tower, the highest conceivable thing out there. What is that? The armchair. It's basically the armchair argument for God. So somebody in the chat help me out with the name of that, the armchair argument for God. But yeah, unless you can give us like a hypothesis that it has more explanatory power than that being, then you have to kind of like take an agnostic viewpoint. Because if you're going to take the atheistic viewpoint, it's the paradigm of theist, right? Theist, positive claim there's a God. Atheist, negative claim that there's a God, right? You're saying there is no God. Lacktheism is completely incoherent, and no philosopher worth their salt actually respects the lacktheism definition. Yeah, somebody help me out with it. The ontological argument, is it the ontological argument? It might be. Actually, yeah, we'll just do a quick armchair argument for God. Ontological argument, yeah, that is right, yeah.
However, I think there is a fair and reasonable argument that there is sufficient scientific evidence to prove that God did not create everything. Because the original...
Okay, so fair enough. So yeah, if you got a reasonable argument that God did not create everything, did not set everything into motion, is not the first mover, yeah, I'd love to hear it. What is your hypothesis?
belief, and the belief still held by...
The what?
that God did not create everything. Because the original belief, and the belief still held by young Earth creationists, is that God created man and woman. We know that that is not true. We evolved from a common ancestor. We and all the other creatures of this world splish-splashed out of the same primordial ooze. We actually know...
Yeah, that's a specific objection against like young Earth creationists, and just like assuming that their worldview is correct. A lot of Christians, including early Christians, early church fathers, were not young Earth creationists. This is like a new idea that I think it just came out in the 1800s, like the 6,000 years thing. But yeah, God could still create the first humans, being Adam and Eve, knowing things. So it could like, for example, a friend of mine, he makes the argument that God sets everything into motion. He's the first mover. He has a specific goal. His end goal is the cross. Now, there's a whole bunch of methods that can happen in between that eventually gets to the cross, where we do end up being Homo sapien, what is it, where we stand on 2 feet. Why are so many words escaping me today? Anyways, we're standing on 2 feet, Homo sapien, Homo erectus, I think is what it is. Bipedal creatures, I think. And then eventually we get to the cross, but it's very bipedal, yeah. So it's very possible we could have been lizard type creatures or whatever it is. But eventually it led to the point where there was like the 2 first humans. And yeah, you would say that God created it because he had a plan. He knew that if he did X, eventually it would lead to Y, and then eventually it would lead to Z, and so on and so forth. So first cause leads to the effect, and he knew what would happen. He knew there'd be an Adam and Eve. And so therefore he created them. That's an argument that can be used. Not saying I hold to it. I'm just saying there's some people that hold to it. When you take one specific model of Christianity and you say, well, I could debunk that, therefore atheism, or maybe not atheism, but at least Christianity is not true. I think that's just mainly attacking fundamentalist Christianity and just looking at that. And Christianity is not fundamentalism. Fundamentalism is rather new. Like I said, early church fathers argued for an allegorical reading of Genesis 1 way before us.
Know an amazing amount more about what the early universe
I'm not bipedal, I only like women.
looked like, and how it came to be expanding, how stars and planets and solar systems are formed, how they die. Thus far, at least, none of that fascinating scientific evidence has included or even warranted a god. We know so...
Of course it does, because that's the cosmological... No, not the cosmo... Why are so many... The contingency argument. That's the contingency argument, right? You have all these things that are set into motion by something else. That's the argument of motion. But basically, you have all these things that are contingent, could be a different way. So therefore, they need a cause, right? The principle of sufficient reason. And eventually, you have to get to something that is necessary. Because if you can't have like a totality of contingent things going on, or even if you did have a totality of contingent things going on ad infinitum, you would still need an explanation for the totality of contingent things. So you need some sort of necessary thing. And the necessary thing is just what we call God. What that ontology of God is, that's where we can like open up discussions about like, hey, is it an all-loving God? Is it an all-powerful God? Whatever. But bare minimum, we have to say that there is some sort of being out there. And I'm just using the being as state of existence that has to be necessary, right? So there is evidence for a God. And that is just simply looking at our world and using like inductive and deductive arguments to come to a conclusion that yes, there has to be some sort of necessary being out there.
So much about how humans came to be, about how the planets came to be, about how the universe might have come to be, and there's no sign of God anywhere, that I think, even though the burden of proof is on the person making the claim, i.e. the claim that there is a God, and
yeah, the person making the claim. If you say there is no God, then you are making a claim.
That it is this specific version of the Christian God. Even though the burden of proof is theirs, I still think it's valid to say that there is proof that God did not create all things.
Well, it depends on what you mean by create all things, right? Like obviously God did not create this little fidget toy that I like to play with, or this other fidget toy that I like to play with. It was like some guy that created it. But, through cause and effect, he sustains, well, not even cause and effect. Let's just say he sustains all things. You can just make that argument. But yeah, it depends on what you mean by all things. Again, you cannot create or destroy matter, but at some point, right? Even like a lot of scientists agree that everything came into existence at some point, had to, unless you go like an internal universe kind of issue, then that has different problems. Actually, I'm gonna recant that. energy cannot be created or destroyed. They'd say like energy always existed. But if God created that energy because the energy could have been different, then God like sustains all things. Yeah, I don't know what kind of argument she's trying to make, and therefore I don't know what argument I'm trying to make.
I could drop my microphone, I'd do it, but I can't.
When in real life, every day, women are
That was a mic drop moment? I don't understand how that's a mic drop moment.
creating eyeballs from scratch,
No, they're not.
brain stems,
Nope.
human beings. We are creating human beings with our bodies.
No, you're not. You're using the design that God has already put into your bodies.
To quote Jinx the Puppet's dismissive reaction, no, you're not. At least the last point makes sense now, and all of this makes a lot more sense if this person is a creationist. The human body is not designed. There is all the evidence to the contrary and zero evidence for that fact. If you have been stifled by a poor education system or heavily indoctrinated enough to have...
So this is him saying no and you just insulting him? Like, is anybody going to actually make an argument in this video? Like, you haven't made an argument, neither is he. So is there just no argument here at all? Are we wasting our time?
Have faith that God designed humans despite all of the contradictory evidence, then that's fair enough, and that's your choice.
There's no contradictory evidence. There's assumptions. You're making assumptions.
But you don't get to be dismissive about people believing in facts, science, and reality. God didn't design humans. And if he did a piss poor job of it.
And
How do you know that, right? Are you just simply stating there are certain effects in humans that I dislike? It's not part of my preference, so therefore I would have done it differently, right? So people make that claim all the time that like God did a bad job designing humans because we could suffocate when we drink something too fast. How do you know that wasn't actually part of God's design, right? So there's this idea of like this utilitarian type of view. If you want to like, if we would create something, we create something with like no suffering and no problems, no trials, no issues, no any of these things. The problem with that, it leads to this like Teletubbies type world that has no meaning making properties. With having things like the ability to choke, it gives us meaning making situations, like saving someone's life as meaning making. Like if somebody's eating a piece of steak and they choke and you save them with the Heimlich maneuver, there's a meaning making that's happening there. So it's very possible that God did create us perfectly, but you just have a preference that is different. The problem with saying like, this doesn't meet my standards is we don't actually have like an objective way to measure perfection. We don't know what perfection is. We've never seen it. We've never observed it. The idea is like, it is without flaw. Okay, so what is a flaw? A flaw is just basically a preference, something that I don't like. Right? You could say, I don't like X, Y, and Z happening. But if somebody comes around and says, I do like X, Y, and Z happening, how do we have an objective way to measure perfection? So saying that God did a bad job is just your preference, right? I could say God did an excellent job because I think that there's more meaning and more value in the current world that we live in than a world that would have been with complete and absolute euphoria.
using his method of creation, you're simply allowing God to use your body to create. He's the one that designed it.
And men still would prefer to worship a god, a male god.
Well, first off, let's make one thing clear. God was not a male until he took the form of Jesus Christ.
Okay, so at least that answers that question. So this is another interpretation question. No, the Hebrew Bible does not ever specify God's gender. I think Dinks is correct here in saying that he is not a man until Jesus appears, because Jesus was a man. But to be fair to this person he's arguing with, and people who claim God is a man in general, he is, by convention of the language, always referred to by masculine pronouns.
No, that's not true. He's referred to masculine pronouns very often, like the father. He is referred to as like a king, a he, a man, all these types of things. But when we're talking like the Holy Spirit, the word ruach, right, is a feminine term. He also calls himself the helper, which is a term that was only used for Eve. I forget what the Hebrew word is, but like that word specifically was it was used for Eve, and then it was used for God. So that would be like something that is feminine too. So there are feminine pronouns that are used for God. There are male pronouns that are used for God. Generally takes on the masculine term, because when we're looking at what the culture he was interacting with, it was a patriarchal culture. And for him to be the head and to be the top, he would have to like take on a patriotic role. He took on a fatherly role, the head of the home, the earth, all of creation was his home, and he was the head. And also the fact he also didn't just only appear as a man with Jesus. He appeared as a man in Genesis as well when he went up to Abram. I don't remember if he had his name changed yet, but he went up to Abram just before he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, and he took on the appearance of a man. He also wrestled Israel or Jacob as a man. there's lots of times where when he took on like a corporal form, I think that's the right word, that he took on the form of a man. So the way that God has revealed himself to us is in like masculine energy. So that's why I refer to him as like a male figure.
Of the Hebrew
Corporal? Or you guys are making fun of how I say it? Stop making fun of my accent.
Bible, in the context of this discussion especially, I think it's fair to say that God is a man, even pre-Jesus.
When
Hey,
the
based.
Son entered a body, yes, he was a physical male. Now, God took the pronoun he for a couple reasons. First off, there never was a gender-neutral pronoun that wasn't it, and God is not an it. He's not a thing. He's a person. And he chose for himself the pronoun he. So I thought we were supposed to accept the pronouns of the people who choose them for themselves.
She's complaining about how, despite women bringing forth life in the real world every day, Christians continue to worship this male godhead figure. She's referring...
Yeah, I'm actually so far on Emma's side here. This is not the best showing for Dinks. Again, I love Dinks. It's not the best showing. He didn't really address her argument. Her argument wasn't that we shouldn't call God he. Her argument is, why do you worship a male god when women bring forth life? That's the argument.
Referring to him by the correct pronouns. She's not in any way not respecting God's pronouns. This is clearly such an uneducated...
Or at least from what I'm seeing. Maybe she's edited Dink's clip, and I don't know. I haven't watched it entirely, so...
I hate the liberals argument. I think Dink's the puppet watches Fox News.
I do hate the liberals, though.
You keep denying God's ability to do that.
Because he claims.
I mean, you can't say hate. I just strongly dislike them. Just awful. But I pray they come to the knowledge of salvation. I'm a good Christian.
To have created life.
Again, prove him wrong.
That's not how this works. Prove him wrong.
Yeah, it does kind of how it works. Like, if you say God did not create life, there's no reason. You got to give some sort of hypothesis, which is like excludes God. You can't just say he didn't do it, and then we say, okay, well, prove it, and you're like, no, you got to prove it. Like, anybody who makes a claim has the burden of proof, right? If you make an assertion, a positive assertion of a knowledge claim, you must have a justification for that.
Okay, I have an issue with both of their statements here. She is doing us atheists a disservice by kind of falling for a Christian stereotype of atheists, which is speaking as though God is real and having a go.
You're falling for you kind of earlier fell for like a stereotype of Christians.
Him. We all do it from time to time if we're talking about the ethics of God in the Bible, because I might say something like, he's a bastard. He commits genocide. He commands genocide. And I think that makes him an evil dictator. But that's as a contextual discussion of...
So I'll just reference, read Matthew Lynch's Flood and Fury if you think that he's committed genocide in the Bible. I don't really want to get into the whole argument of like the Josiah. No. Anyway, some guy starts with a J after Moses about his conquest. What the heck is his name? Anyways, his conquest of the Canaanites and what exactly happened there, and whether or not it was a genocide. I'd argue that there's only one nation that was actually fully wiped out, and that was Tyre. But you guys have all heard my argument before. Joshua, thank you. Joshua's conquest. So yeah, go read Flood and Fury or Bloody, Brutal, and Barbaric. Read either one of those books. Really great explanations on whether or not it's genocide in the Bible. But let's just grant it is genocide. Why is it wrong? Your preference. Okay, you don't like genocide. That doesn't make God non-existent or not an authority over your life. Oh no, God mean, I know like ye, therefore not real. It's not an argument.
Of the character of God as portrayed by the Bible. There is not a God who claims to have created everything. There is a collection of texts assembled by man, written by man, in which some of those authors have claimed that God created everything. So that's my...
Yes and no, right? We believe in true authorship. But the question is, in that true authorship, did they genuinely have these interactions with the true God? And I think it's really hard to argue that just from the Old Testament because we're just missing so much information. But I think you can make a very, very, very strong argument using the historical reportage model on why they actually had an interaction with Jesus and why the best explanation of what happened on Easter morning is that he actually resurrected.
-1 point for the atheist that he's arguing with, minus another 100 points to Dinks for saying, prove that he didn't. Since Dinks, despite acting like such...
But prove that he didn't. I mean, like, I lack the belief in a God. I lack the belief that there is no God. And you flip it, prove that he does exist, prove he doesn't exist. Like, it goes both ways.
An intelligent person in being
Watching
so
the
dismissive
wrong New York Sesame Street
of their opponent. Granted, I am being here too, but that's because he's genuinely an idiot. Dinks, I'm going to explain a very big...
How is he genuinely an idiot? How do you know? Did you do like an IQ test on him? This whole video is just an ad hom. I mean, it's not really even an ad hom. It's just insults. Because there's not really any argument being brought up by anybody so far.
Beginner's philosophical analogy for you called Russell's teapot. The philosopher Bertrand Russell came up with the following analogy. He wrote that if he were to assert, without offering any kind of proof, that there was a teapot orbiting the sun between the Earth and Mars, too small to be seen by any telescope, he could not expect anyone to believe him because there is no way to prove the assertion wrong. The most succinct explanation for this.
Yeah, because he also doesn't have a justification for his belief. You also don't have a justification against it. Now we can just make a quick inductive argument for that, right? I know how teapots are made. I know how things go into space. I know that we didn't send a teapot into space, so therefore it's not likely that there's a teapot circling, Saturn or whatever it is. So you could just give a probability, a Bayesian probability of what is the probability, and you could just say it's so low that we could just conclude that it's not there, right? We just pump in that information of everything we know about teapots, everything we know about traveling to space, everything and then we can't say for absolute certainty that there isn't one, but we can say with relative confidence that is most likely not there, right? And then if somebody comes around and says, well, it is, then yeah, you just do the opposite, right? They'd have to do a Bayesian analysis to say, hey, yeah, it's more likely to be there. And so then you have two hypotheses on the table. We say hypothesis 1, there's a teapot. Hypothesis 2, there is not a teapot. Which hypothesis has the best explanatory power, explanatory scope? And we'd say that there's not a teapot has the best explanatory power, explanatory scope. Now, if we look at something like God's existence, I'd actually argue that God's existence has the most explanatory power and explanatory scope. Looking at things like the contingency argument, the argument for motion, the teleological arguments, the different ones, fine-tuning often gets dismissed because it's not relatively understood what's trying to be said in fine-tuning. But if you really understand fine-tuning, I think it's a very strong argument. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. There's a lot of atheists, prominent atheist people who say that is one of the best arguments for God's existence. And the scientific ones especially, not really the philosophical ones. Alex O'Connor himself said the strongest argument for God is the sheer number of arguments for God. I did see that. Alex O'Connor has also said that the contingency argument is one of the best. Like him and Joe Schmidt sat down and went over the best arguments for God, and they went contingency is a very, very, very strong argument for God. So they're really, really good arguments for God. There are also philosophical arguments that are against God or for other naturalistic things. But at the end of the day, we just look at it, we go through all the data, and we say which one has best explanatory power, explanatory scope. And for me, God is more convincing. There are atheist philosophers that have made the arguments that theists are perfectly rational and justified to believe what they believe. But they also make the argument that so are atheists. The problem is we always look at each other and just dismiss each other. You're stupid. You're stupid for believing what you're believing. Yeah, Russell's teapot. And they don't really understand what Russell's teapot is trying to put out there. Well, to be fair, actually, she does understand what Russell's teapot is trying to put out there. I just think it's a silly argument.
For this was provided to us by Carl Sagan, which is why it's known as the Sagan Standard. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Stupid saying. Because nobody can actually give me a definition of what an extraordinary evidence is. Nobody. Not a single person I've ever talked to. Not one person who's ever made the claim has actually given us an actual definition of what an extraordinary evidence is. They've all been able to give definitions of what an extraordinary claim is. It's anything that is not within your ordinary life, which is very problematic because there are a lot of things that are in our ordinary life now that weren't in our ordinary life 1,000 years ago. This would be our understanding of quantum physics, right? That'd be a quick example. So part of that now is, but here's the thing, when we discovered quantum physics, we didn't have extraordinary evidence. We had a regular amount of evidence for it. We just discovered it. It was a normal amount of evidence. We just observed it happening. And we were like, okay, that's real. We did put the mathematics in. We seen the mathematics worked. We're like, okay, that's real. That's a normal amount of evidence. That's not an extraordinary amount of evidence. That's just normal amount of evidence for a very extraordinary claim. Quantum mechanics was a very extraordinary claim. So it's very, very difficult to define what is considered extraordinary evidence. I've yet to hear anybody do it. But yeah, I guess it'd just be the amount of evidence that you find convincing, which is just your mental state, because everybody's going to find things convincing or not convincing. For example, we have people today that are not convinced that the earth is round, even though there's a lot of evidence that says that the earth is round. There's an extraordinary amount. Is it a lot? If it's just the number of things that we can observe, then like, how do you quantify it? Like, how many numbers of pieces of evidence do you have to have before it's considered extraordinary, which is a whole nother philosophical problem. So like that this is like a side tangent. That philosophical problem is like, am I bald? Most people would say no, even though the side of my head, well, right now it's kind of fuzzy, but like 2 days ago, it was like completely bald. People would say no because I have the top of my head. But if you flip it and all I had was this side of my hair, the cul-de-sac, and this side was bald, people would say I am bald. Even though like the ratio to hair to head is exactly the same. Or if we had like, if I was balding, how many pieces of hair do I have to lose before I become like actually declared bald? Right? If I shave my head completely, but I still have my eyebrows, am I bald? Like there's like a whole philosophical problem of like when we determine things are X. So like, how exactly would you determine you have enough pieces of evidence for something to be considered extraordinary? So the extraordinary evidence thing, I think, is just completely like an irrational point to hold. You either have justifications or you do not have a justification, right? And that justification is going to be like off an individual head state on whether or not you find it convincing.
The burden of proof is on the person making the claim always.
I don't know which one to look
If
at.
any religious person, mostly
That's not entirely true. Like that's just like the pop culture kind of like reference of burden of proof, as like anybody who makes a claim has a burden of proof. Again, we've went over this like 3 or 4 times now. If you have a belief, you need a justification. Simple as that.
I've seen Christians do this, although I've seen a number of Muslims argue the same way. If any of them say something to you along the lines of, you can't prove it's not like that, you can safely ignore them. Just like Russell's T.
Okay, well then I can safely ignore you when you tell me the same thing. When you tell me to prove God, I'm just going to safely ignore you. Like I just do this. Like the problem with that is like there's this like intellectual like superiority like vibe that's happening here. I'm smarter than you. I can just do the thing. I don't have to engage with your conversation. I'm just better. You got a burden of proof. Like it's just like, okay, that's not how the world works. Like there's a lot of theists out there. If we just adopt that viewpoint and you say like, I can just safely ignore you when you tell me to prove that it's not true, well, then I'll safely ignore you when you tell me to prove that it is true. And then I'll continue to vote and I'll continue to be in politics and I'll continue to do all the things that you guys don't want us to do. And then all of our Christian viewpoints will be in your legislation and there's not a damn thing that you can do about it. I mean, either you want to engage in discourse or you just want to dismiss people that you don't agree with. I think the former is going to be better. Engage with people in discourse. Try to validate your worldviews. Don't just dismiss other people and call them stupid because you think their viewpoints are stupid. I genuinely think atheism is stupid. Like genuinely and I used to be an atheist. I think I was stupid because I really didn't look at it. I really didn't study it. I really didn't think about it. At this point in my life, in this point in my career, I really think atheism is the stupidest stance to hold. But I'm not going to dismiss you and hand wave you because you're an atheist. Either we can engage in a conversation, you can be a justification for it, or you can try to dismiss me because you think I'm a theist. And granted, you're not talking to me, but I'm just talking about like the general scope of these conversations.
We can make up any old shit. We can find any old bullshit that has some historical precedent. Like, for example, mermaids. I could say right now that the reason that we've never actually seen any real-life mermaids is because they have a special ability that makes them invisible whenever they don't want to be seen by humans. Prove they don't. It's pointless.
Yeah. So then I can just like take an agnostic viewpoint on mermaids. I can't say that they do not exist. I actually really can't say that they don't exist. I would say that I have to take some sort of agnostic viewpoint. But then we could also just look at the claims of mermaids and say, what would we expect to see if mermaids actually did exist? Well, if we'd expect X, Y, and Z, and then we look for X, Y, and Z, and we don't see those things, we don't see those signs, then we could say, hey, they probably don't exist. But if you're just saying, if you're just inventing ontological properties of a being that just can't be noticed, and I can't say, no, it doesn't exist. I just have to say, I don't know. But saying, no, it doesn't is like very dishonest because you really genuinely actually do not know. Because if you just invent a being with an ontological property that cannot be seen, heard, taste, smelt, all these types of things, maybe there is a type of mermaid in the 5th dimension. You don't know.
It is the most rudimentary, like basic bullshit toddler way of arguing for something, of being an apologist, is to be like, prove it's not. It is like
but that's literally what you guys do. You guys just look at, prove it is, prove it's not. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. You think it's not. You think like you have like some intellectual superiority just by denying things. Again, agnosticism, highly respectable. If you say, I don't know, maybe it is. I don't know. What's the data you have? Let's look at the data. Let's see if it's true. That's respectable. But just saying, no, prove it is, prove it's not. Both are childish. Like, let's be real.
A toddler being like, yeah, when I was in the forest earlier, I saw a dragon, but luckily I found a stick and I shaved it into a sword and I stabbed it dead. And then it disappeared in a puff of smoke. And their friend going, no, you didn't. And them going, oh, prove I didn't.
Yeah, because you can look at you can look at the fact that children are known to make up stories. So like, again, you just pump in the data and see what the best conclusion is. Do children make up stories? Yes. How often do children make up stories? We could say like a 0.5, right? We know this just from watching behaviors. We'll say like a 0.5 out of 1. Right. Have we seen any dragons in the last blah, blah, blah? No. So we say the probability of running into a dragon is like a 0.0000001. We just keep doing this. We just keep pumping into like an Bayesian analysis. And then we could just say, yep, the likelihood of them running into a dragon is very, 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 very low. So we can just make the assertion that it probably did not happen. So we could say, no, you did not run into a dragon. Like, it's not just like people make claims that are absurd. Therefore, you don't believe them, because there's a whole bunch of absurd claims that have happened throughout history that happened to be true. And if everybody just automatically dismissed every single absurd claim that came up to them, just like high-end claims, just nope, they're all false, 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 then you would actually have no reason to investigate and to learn. But if you take like an agnostic point of view and somebody makes like an absurd, insane claim, well, you go, okay, well, let's figure it out. Let's go through it. How do we know this claim is likely to be true? That's how we discover new things. That is the scientific method. This is why, like, in science, they only have theories. They don't make claims of absolute no's or absolute yeses, right? They say this is the best explanation considering all the data, and they're always open to having that. This is something that atheists claim, that science loves, absolutely loves saying, I don't know, and open to change and open to investigation. Unless for some reason it's a claim about like a God. Then it's no. You're wrong. Doesn't exist.
That's literally this argument. If that was a genuine belief and not just an escape from an argument that they know they can't win, then they would believe in every religion. They would believe in all the other religions' gods as well, because you can't prove that they don't exist either.
Yes, you can. We can prove that Islam is false simply by looking at history and see that it contradicts history. So it's like a simple concept, right? Was Jesus crucified? History says yes. The closest sources say yes. Hundreds of years later, a Quran comes out that claims to be the actual word of God that contradicts history. The probability of Jesus contradicts that Jesus was crucified, so contradicts that history. The probability of Jesus not actually being crucified is very low. For example, John Dominic Crossan says one of the most sure things that we know in history is that Jesus was crucified. And so they claim that it's the actual word of God. The actual word can't be wrong. The word is wrong, so therefore Islam is wrong. Or you could do the Islamic dilemma. The Islamic dilemma confirms the Torah, confirms the gospel. The gospel and Torah disagree with the Quran. Because it disagrees with the Quran, but it affirms the gospel and the Torah, both things cannot be true. The Quran has to be false. There's a logical contradiction there. So you can disprove Islam, right? You can disprove Mormonism. You can disprove these religions. There are solid, good arguments to disprove them. We're still waiting for a solid, good argument that just isn't conjecture that Christianity is false. This whole whataboutism is just like, there's this base assumption that for some reason, because most people don't study other religions. They don't study Islam. They don't study Judaism. They don't study Mormonism. They don't study these other religions. Look at it. They only have known what fundamentalist Christians have told them for years when they've gone to their Sunday service, and therefore they assume all religions have the same epistemology or same standards of truth. They do not. They do not. And you're just saying we're all the same and we all have the same standards and we all have the same evidence, but we don't. We really, really don't. For example, with Muhammad, we have his writings. Muhammad probably exists. We have some writings around him that confirm just his existence. But anything that confirms any sort of miraculous event that he does doesn't come until 200 years later, written down. I'm not even talking about earliest manuscripts. I'm talking about when it was actually pen to paper. It was 200 years after him. With Jesus Christ, we have 21 eyewitness accounts that are alive within the time period of him, within his lifetime. That is not the same criteria. So just, I'm the one thing that drives me nuts is people like, well, you could just do that with Islam. You really can't. You really can't. You just cannot do it. It does not have the same epistemological standards.
Proof Muhammad wasn't a prophet then. You see what I mean?
I just did prove that Muhammad wasn't. Muslims, yes, they do that. Prove Muhammad wasn't a prophet. Then I bring up a scientific inaccuracy or a prophecy that he failed at, or a contradiction between something that he stated, and that proves that he's not a prophet, because for him to be a prophet, he has to have some divine knowledge, which it shows that he does not have. So therefore, it's not proven. So yes, you absolutely can do it. Muslims do that to me all the time. Muslims come up, prove that he's not a prophet. And I go, okay, let's do it. Let's go through it. Let's show you. Let's walk through it together. My God.
Pointless. Not worth our time.
Have no evidence that God created life.
Actually, there's plenty of evidence. All of nature is evidence
No, there isn't.
because of the
Yes, there is.
fine-tuning of the universe. If your DNA was off by 1%, you would die.
If your DNA was off by 1%, and isn't the contrary argument to this, like I mentioned earlier, all the poor design? What about all the women that die in childbirth and have died?
Yeah, so Dinks is not really representing the teleological argument well here. It's more along the lines is that we have a universe that is designed for life permitting. That does not mean that people are going to have optimal lives, like the optimal version of like your utilitarian, not like this utilitarian worldview that you have a preference for. You have this preference for this utilitarian worldview. You don't see it, so therefore God doesn't exist. No, the argument is that, again, teleological argument, is that there's such high complexities that if 1% off, life wouldn't be permitting at all. For example, DNA structure. If it was off, then life wouldn't be permitting. We wouldn't even be able to have these conversations or discussions. So it's so fine-tuned that it's like 1 to the power of 10 to the power of 121, which is just an insanely high number that we even have the ability to exist in the first place.
Historically in much larger numbers. Forgive me for bringing up something so horrible, but what about children who are stillborn? Or fetuses that aren't viable or don't make it to birth? If you're arguing that our DNA is...
Again, that's not an argument, right? So the argument here that's being made is that responding to an argument with just questions isn't an argument. It's not refuting an argument either. If the theist makes the argument that the world is so finely tuned that the probability of just happening by chance is so low, their better explanation is that it was guided by some way or some hand, then you just saying, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? Is not an argument. You would have to actually bring up an argument that these factors like X factor, Y factor, Z factor actually shows that it's not finely tuned. But that's not the case, because you can still have all those factors where it's like, yes, we have huge unalignment rates with like stillborn children. That's a thing that happens, but it still doesn't change the fact that the universe is still finely tuned to permit life in the first place. Like that hasn't been refuted. So you have to like disagree with premises before you disagree with the conclusion. You just cannot assert. You cannot assert questions and be like, what about this? What about this? What about this? That doesn't refute arguments.
Is so perfect. If it was different, we wouldn't exist. Is an argument that God designed us, then unsuccessful human life surely is evidence of the contrary. It's
No, because that's not the argument. That's not the fine-tuning argument. But again, I don't know if Dinks is really representing it well here.
completely ridiculous, but you don't need me to tell you that creationism is fucking absurd. God did not design us. Obviously, there is so much evidence that is the case, and zero evidence other than, look at the trees, isn't the human eyeball amazing? That is the only evidence, is just saying, wow, but look how nice everything is. That is all that they have, the creationists. It's fucking stupid.
It's not all that they have. I mean, if you think that's all that they have, then you just haven't looked at the literature.
Please, can we put a stop to religious education systems? Please, can we invest more in science for children?
Yeah, sure. Only on the condition that you also implement basic logic classes. You know what schools mostly do logic classes? Because it's not the secular schools, it's religious schools. And I'm not talking like fundamentalist religious schools. It's usually like high church religious schools. They'll do like logic classes and basic philosophy. Because a lot of scientists seem to neglect basic logic. This is why there's like a philosophy of science to make sure that, they stay on and are correct.
If the position of the Earth was any closer or further away from the sun, we would all die.
I've said this before when we've talked about the Earth and the vastness of space and all this stuff. Why did God make all the other planets then? Why did he make this?
Again, just asking questions doesn't refute anything. You can implement like 1,001 theodicies. I don't even know if I'm using that word right today. Anyways, you can implement 1,001 reasons why he would have done it. 1,001 reasons. I don't have to actually give a reason, because the point still stays true that if it was closer, we'd have no permitting life. If it was further, we'd have no permitting life. Goldilocks zones are very few and far between. And even in the Goldilocks zones, we haven't seen any like crazy life that we can talk about. Now, granted, that's very hard to see, but it's just like asking a question about what ifs doesn't refute arguments.
Unfathomably enormous, expanding universe. Were those like his first tries? Like the Earth had to be in this exact orbit.
Right, so you're just imposing your own thinking. It's like, oh, he tried it here and he failed. It could very well be that God made the expanse of the huge universe with all these empty planets because he has the hopes for us one day to explore all of it. Because in scripture, it's not, we don't just go to heaven and stay in heaven, right? We get a new earth, we get a new Jerusalem. Maybe we just spend all of eternity expanding through the whole universe, the massive universe, populating all the planets, finding new species, integrating with them. There's a whole bunch of possibilities on why he could have done it. Maybe he just did it to show that he could, because he's just so great and powerful. There's like lots of reasons that you could say, but you can't point at all of them and be like, what about this? That doesn't disprove the argument that, hey, we do have a universe that is life permitting.
Facilitate life as we know it. So are all the other planets and all the other star systems in the vast, vast universe, were those just God's test runs? Was he getting it wrong? And then he finally cracked it with Earth, and so we have all of these...
She's not responding, like, granted, Dinks is not making much of arguments either, but she's not really responding with any sort of argument. There's no argument being had in this video. I have to make the arguments myself to make for a more interesting video.
Fucking trillion, billion, zillion, infinite number of empty planets out there. Come on! Use your brain a tiny bit. I beg of you.
I agree. Use your brain a tiny bit and actually present a real, tangible argument.
If male and female wasn't made at the same time, we would never have existed beyond the first two people. Should I keep going?
If male and female hadn't been created at the same time, we would never have existed beyond those for... What the fuck are you saying? What are you talking about? Not only does this imply a very incestuous line of human ancestry...
Doesn't evolution imply a very incestuous human ancestry? Don't you guys all claim that we're all part of the same ancestors, that my cousin is literally a banana? I always find it so funny that like hardcore evolutionary people, and again, I'm agnostic on this. Maybe Jim Bob can change my mind on why I should just be anti-evolution. Maybe we can have that discussion one day, but right now I'm agnostic. But like the whole idea is they always point at the Bible. Look at all the incest. We all came from the two same people. Incest, bro. What do you think evolution is? What do you think happened with evolution? The idea of like abiogenesis, that we all came from a single-celled organism. We all have the same ancestors. This is something Neil deGrasse Tyson argues about all the time. It's like we're all brothers and sisters. We all come from Africa. So like this idea of like just like anti-incest, hate them Christians. It's like, bro, what do you think evolution is telling us? Evolution is telling us it's incest. I'm going to eat my cousin later.
I mean, you go back far enough, we are all related. I'll give you that, pal. If male and female hadn't been made at the same time...
Okay, well, at least she admitted to it.
As in, like, is he saying, like, if somehow a male human evolved, and then, like, after that male human's lifespan was over, a female human evolved, and they couldn't have procreated?
That was the guy's video we react to on Tuesday. He's the one who banged his cousin. Oh my God, I can't believe that. Can you please pass the uncle?
Like, what is this argument? It's the most insane thing I've ever heard a puppet say.
And yet women are not worshipped simply because we are women.
Because you're sinful and you...
Men aren't worshipped either. What are you talking about? You shouldn't be worshiping no man except the man Lord Jesus Christ. That's the only one worthy of worship. But yeah, we should worship women. Why? What was the argument? Because they can make babies? I mean, that's a pretty glorious and amazing thing to do, but I don't think it's worthy of worship.
You haven't earned worship. God alone has.
I'm so done. I'm so done.
Well, that's a relief.
Yeah, for me too. Otherwise, we might have heard more babies' arguments for beginner apologists from Dinks. How embarrassing. It is genuinely... Okay, I'm going to put Emma down because my hand hurts. So this is Dinks the Puppet's most recent video, False Pastor Strikes Again. It will become clear very quickly why he is deemed a false pastor. I'll let
Worship a gender, what is a woman? Super based.
you see for yourself.
All right, MAGA versus Jesus, round 12.
Well, let's make it clear. I'm not here to defend MAGA, but I am here to defend Jesus. So if I have to pick between the two
This like just came out. How new is this video?
of you, which one is actually representing Jesus, I'm not picking you.
You don't have to pick between the two of them. It's not this guy or MAGA. You can say, I don't agree with this pastor's interpretation of the Bible. And also, I don't support MAGA because they're horrible. But no, he's got to choose, guys. So Dinks the Puppet is going to support MAGA.
His whole argument was if he had to choose. He didn't say that he has to choose. He said if he had to choose, he would.
I have often thought that people like...
Wait. What is that whole thing? Okay, if you're against Antifa, what does Antifa stand for? Antifa stands for anti-fascist. So like if you're against Antifa, you're clearly for fascism. Well, what does MAGA stand for? MAGA stands for Make America Great Again. So if you're against Make America Great Again, then you clearly stand for making America bad again. That's like the obvious conclusion, right? Like that's the thing. So like if you're anti-Antifa, then clearly you're pro-fascism. So if you are anti-MAGA, then clearly you are pro making America bad again. Because we are part of the anti-bad guy good guy club, guys. We're part of the anti-bad guy good guy club. So if you're against us, you're clearly part of the anti-good guy bad guy club. That's the logical conclusion, right? That's what you have to be. I don't know if that's her argument, but I just wanted to say that.
MAGA, who are just like absolutely horrible and use Christianity as a weapon to be horrible, have like really missed the fundamental basic points of Jesus. For all we can talk about the nitty gritty, kind of feel like his main thing was love and fellowship, and that just seems to be missed.
Do people read the New Testament? Yes, Jesus was about love. He was about fellowship. He was about not hating your neighbor. But there's a lot of rebuking. 90% of what Jesus did was rebuking and calling people out for their sin and telling them that they were going to go to hell and that they need to repent and come back and pick up their cross and bear it. But for some reason, people only focus on the loving uncle puts his arm around you. Hey, big guy, you're doing a great job. That's not who Jesus is. Jesus is the judge. For he is the one who's going to judge you on the last day. And he's not going to look at you and be like, you know what, you're kind of an okay guy. You're kind of an okay guy. Why don't you come on into heaven? That's not what he says. By any means. By any means. I'm just kind of sick of this whole Jesus is only this loving, hugging guy. He whipped people. He threw tables. He rebuked. He condemned. He told people that they were going to hell, right? He gave speeches where entire people walked away from him because they couldn't comprehend the severity of the things that he was saying.
MAGA says the Bible is against abortion.
Actually, most of the time they say...
The Bible doesn't specifically talk about abortion because it wasn't really like a huge practice that happened back then. But again, we just bring this up. The Bible condemns the death of innocent persons. Fetuses are innocent persons. The Bible condemns the death of fetuses, right? It's just a simple conclusion. It says God hates the blood of the innocent. Hates it. Fetuses are innocent persons. So if you can just make that conclusion. Now, you might disagree with premise 2, and then we'll have like a whole argument about flow on why, it is a person, right? Because it has a potential future like ours, and it's a member of a rational kind. But yeah, you can make the argument that the Bible condemns abortion. Very, very simple argument. I think it's solid. I think it's worked. I think it's valid. I think it's sound. Again, you can probably disagree with this. If you're going to disagree with this one, I think that's going to be a big uphill battle for you.
God is against abortion. You have this passage here where he literally tells his people to choose life.
I think I genuinely already have a marker in this bit of Deuteronomy. Good old Deuteronomy. We are not talking about, sadly, the character from Cats. This section is called The Choice of Life and Death. Dinks is referring to 19 here. I'm going to start from 17 for the context. But if your heart turns away and you will not hear, but are drawn away to worship other gods and serve them, would love Dinks and other Christians to deal with that from a monotheistic perspective. Who is God so jealous of all this?
Henotheism. So Christians from a monotheistic point of view don't, even from the monotheism point of view, they don't deny the existence of these other beings. They would say that they're fallen angels. It's just using a language that's like Elohim. They're Elohim, right? Other gods. And then a lot of Christians would argue that these other gods don't actually have being. Like, for example, in Jeremiah, there's an argumentation that they don't have any life to them. They don't do anything, that they're just idols and lumps of clay, and they actually have no power. That's one of the things that Elijah makes the argument for, is like, where is Baal? Why doesn't he do anything, right? Like, he's like, was he taking a shit? He's pretty much making the argument that he doesn't exist. You can look at Michael Hyer's viewpoint on this, where it's like, divine counsel, right? There are other Elohim, but they're lesser. So this would be more like a henotheism, right? There is a monotheistic God, a singular God. But at the end of the day, there are lesser gods. This is the divine council theory. So it's the idea, like, for example, in Job, Satan met with God in his council. And then in Genesis, he judges the gods of Egypt. And then in Psalms, it says that he stood amongst the council of Elohim and he judged them. Or there's more, Zechariah, where he's being judged. The council is there with them, and he pushes the council puts the white clothes on them. And then there's one I'm specifically missing. I think it's in Kings, where it says that his council will put a lying tongue among the prophets. Do I hold the divine council? Yeah, I hold the divine council, 100%.
All the time in the Hebrew Bible. I declare to you today that you shall surely perish. You shall not live long in the land that you are going over the Jordan to enter and possess. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore, choose life, that you and your offspring may live. This is God being a tyrant again. This has nothing to do. This is so weird. It has nothing to do with...
Yeah, God's a tyrant. I think. What is the definition of tyrant? Hold on. Tyrant. Oh, cruel, oppressive. No, he's not a tyrant. No, not a tyrant. I thought tyranny was just like being somebody who's like the boss. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's cruel and oppressive. Again, that's just your subjective preferences. But hey, yeah, no, I agree with her. I think Dinks took it out of context for sure.
With abortion, even a little bit. It doesn't even have anything to do with like looking after your fellow man and prioritizing the life of others. It is literally, if you worship gods other than me, even though later you're going to claim that no other gods exist, then I'll kill you. This is a very, very...
Yeah, that's not tyrannical. Yeah, if you worship evil, then you don't deserve... Oh my goodness, where did I pause this? That's like... There's some... this look in her eyes right now is some Darth Sidious thing going on. Darth Sidious look here. But yeah, no, if you worship evil, God will judge you. I don't see a problem with that.
Very specific contextual message to the...
Unless you want to say like being evil, like not judging evil is tyrannical.
Ancient Israelites about how you must not worship other gods or serve other gods. It is insane.
the smugness, you didn't know about other gods, did you? Except for the fact that so many Christians, like again, Michael Heiser, very prominent. He was a pastor, right? Literal pastor, wrote entire books on these other gods.
It is so clutching at straws, so scraping around the bottom of the barrel to take just the words choose life.
Choose life.
She is right about that. He did pick a verse out of context, a bad verse to pick.
From this passage about not worshipping other gods as an argument against abortion. That's insane. It's not remotely close to what this is about. People argue that God in the Bible is not against abortion for a variety of biblical reasons that are much more rational and intelligent than cherry-picking two words out of a section that has nothing to do with it. For example, the punishment for if you hurt a woman and you accidentally kill a fetus in utero, the punishment is not the same as for murder. I think that those biblical arguments...
Actually, there's good arguments. Now, it's minority viewpoints. There is a good argument in that that the punishment is the same, because there's some ambiguous language to whether the harm fell upon the child or to the mother. Now, there's this assumption that isn't a lot of scholarship that it is towards the mother, but it could very well be implied towards the child. Now, I think it's probably talking about the mother, most likely not talking about the child. But again, I'm just bringing up the fact that there are arguments, right? And again, there are minority arguments and there's scholarly arguments for it too, that it is talking about the harm that falls upon the child. Now, again, is this problematic for me? No, because the Mosaic Law is not a moral standard. That is not the standard which determines all things that are good and which all things are evil. It's a judicial case studies, right? It's given to a sinful people group to eventually move them towards sanctification. So the idea is basically they're sinful, they're broken, so God works with them to eventually grow them into the people they're supposed to be. And we know this because we can look at the Babylonian code, the Hammurabi code, and we could see the correlates between the two. And we could say that it says, God says, you guys say this, God says this instead. Very often God isn't implementing, he's not prescribing certain laws. He's saying, in the case of X, Y, and Z, you should do X, Y, and Z, right? He's not saying that, hey, this is the law and this is the way. There's certain things that are in there. But there's a lot of things where it's just a standard they're already living by, and then God gives a code in which they should do it differently. And so this is why it's case study. For example, there's one where it's like, if you want to figure out if a woman is a virgin, so it's like, and people bring this up as like, God didn't know. So it's like one of the ways to prove that if a woman was a virgin on her wedding night was to see that if she bled, but the case is not everybody bleeds. But the problem is they don't read 2 verses before where it says, suppose this happens. It's a supposed, it's a hypothetical. And so it's giving a scenario in which you could prove she was or was not a virgin. That's a way to do it. But there are other ways that you could go about proving it or giving evidence. The idea is that, hey, if you have suspicions, then you are to start an investigation and to see that if it was true. That's the point of like a case study. Another example of this would be, it says that if your bull got out and it gored your neighbor, then you're to put the bull to death. Well, what if your chicken got out and gored your neighbor or your goat or whatever, right? Like there's no specific writings. That's why it's a case study. That's why the whole thing starts on eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, mark for a mark, burn for a burn, stripe for a stripe. It uses that a lot is so that you can apply that knowledge to yourself and implement it to the culture around you. They didn't have a letter of law idea that we do now. This is why we shouldn't read scripture through Western eyes. Another book you guys should read. Hello, baby.
Hi, baby.
Give me a kiss. I love you.
I love you too.
You're so pretty.
Thank you.
Outweigh taking choose life from that passage that has nothing to do with abortion. But, you know, I'm just a stupid atheist, so what do I know?
Now,
Based.
true, it wasn't written in English, and the terminology, how we use it today, didn't exist then.
The terminology in the language is irrelevant. That's not what the passage
Yes, it is completely relevant. Terminology and language is completely relevant, but you are correct. That is not what the passage is talking about.
is about. It's about worshipping other gods. It's got nothing to do with abortion. Oh, you know, it was a different language. Yes, you could translate it differently. It doesn't have anything to do with the topic you're discussing.
But life in general is still what he wants his people to choose.
For themselves. This isn't about choosing life in a train spotting way or about choosing to protect the life of your fellow humans. This is about saving your own skin because God is
Would you mind grabbing me a 7-Up? Thank you very much.
threatening that you will die if you don't worship only him. This is not about being a life-affirming person. It is about God threatening your life. I don't know if this person is genuinely an idiot and just like Googled the words Choose Life Bible and just plucked out whatever passage they came across and has never really read the Bible. Or they are deliberately duplicitous and generally dishonest and just assume that most of their viewers won't Google the passage and read the outlying context that says, actually, this has nothing to do with abortion and life in that context doesn't have anything to do with this discussion. Why are they even referencing it? I think it's the
You
latter.
got me a can with a messed up bottom. Wait, hold on. I have an idea.
I don't think you can be that blind to your own faith when you talk about it this much. I think that's probably deliberate dishonesty, which is very Christian.
False religions in the area that would sacrifice their children on altars.
Deliberate dishonesty is also very atheist. You know how many atheists take the verses out of context to try to disprove Christianity? Happens all the time.
Fetuses aren't
It's almost like it's very human.
children. Whether you're pro or anti-abortion, fetuses aren't children.
We are
Well, okay, hold on. Define child. A young human being below the age of puberty or below the legal age of majority. Well, fetus is young. It is a human being. It is below the age of puberty and below the age of legal majority. That, by definition, is child. It's a sprite, actually, by the way. That's my bad.
are doing in our country is sacrificing children on the altar of convenience.
That's also a myth. That's a highly, highly problematic myth. This idea that, again, it's a very sexist patriarchal. I don't know you don't like the word patriarchy, Dinks, but unfortunately it does stem from patriarchy. It's a very anti-woman myth. The idea that people get abortions out of convenience.
They absolutely do. Data is very clear on that. That's the majority of abortions. Majority. Right? There's very few abortions that happen for rape cases, very few abortions that happen because the mother's life on the line. That's almost non-existent. It does happen. It's very rare. All of them are because I can't afford it or I'm not ready.
Maybe some do. Is that
Almost all of them.
necessary to protect the rights of women who have unviable fetuses? Is it
Very rare.
worth forcing those women to carry to term something that is not alive, something that they...
No. This is a straw man. No pro-lifer wants you guys to carry dead children inside your wombs. Nobody. Not one of us.
expected to be their child and that is not alive? Is it worth forcing them through that trauma? Is it worth forcing them through the medical trauma of a fetus
Yes. Yeah, it's absolutely worth forcing you through the medical trauma so you don't kill your own child.
that risks their life? This is a
Most don't risk your lives.
genuine problem illustrated all over the
It's not really that big of a problem. The reality of the matter is y'all want your sex without the consequences. If it's really that bad, like if having a child is so dangerous, stop having sex. That's the logical conclusion. Not like the fact that these people think, oh my God, it's so dangerous, we should be allowed to kill our children. The thing that literally made 8 billion people plus is so dangerous for us that we should be allowed to kill them if we want to. Why not just don't have sex? Like why like you guys are holding sex higher value than life. Like life is not even worth living if you can't have sex. That is crazy.
US right now, where doctors are struggling about what to do when women whose lives are at risk if they don't have this important medical procedure.
It's not an important medical procedure. Killing a child is not an important medical procedure. Debate me on this. Let's set up a debate, me and you, whatever platform you want, on whether or not abortion is well, let's pick the topic. Abortion is just wrong. Shouldn't do it.
But they fear being persecuted by the state because of anti-abortion laws. This is about...
Yeah, of course the laws need to be negotiated with and finely tuned, but the conclusion isn't you should be allowed to kill your babies.
Women's fundamental right to life. If you think...
It's not... What is a right, for one? Where do they get this fundamental right to life? And two, how's it taking away the right to life? Abortion is healthcare and kidnapping is daycare.
Dodgy and shitty, that women should be allowed to use their bodies how they want, and that they should be...
Nobody thinks that you should be able to use your bodies how you want, right? Like I can't run down the street right now completely naked, covered in green jello, doing the helicopter and spraying my naked green jello body juice all over everybody down the street. I'm not allowed to do that, right? I also can't just take all sorts of drugs. Can't do that. Not allowed to do that. I also can't use my body to jump at your body and hit your body, right? There's lots of ways that we limit our bodies. Like this whole idea of bodily autonomy, like you have all the rights to do everything you want with your body whenever you want, it's just not true. It is just not true. It's not a real thing that actually happens. We limit people's bodies all the time. All the time.
Allowed to have an abortion if they aren't ready or can't look after a child, even though these Christians don't seem to care what happens to the children after they're born.
Yes, they do. Like, oh my God, the leading adoptions, all adoptions, almost all adoptions are by Christians. Almost all. Now, granted, there's always outlier situations, but even Matt Dillahunty doesn't even argue that, right? Him and his debate against Destiny. Him and Destiny had a debate. He fully conceded that, yeah, no, you can't argue that. Christians really do adopt them all, but he still says that you should be allowed to abort them. Like, the fact that they don't care about children is the most ridiculous argument in the world, because there are 2 million. I going through puberty, my voice cracked. There are 2 million people currently right now on the waiting list for adoption. Waiting list. 2 million couples just waiting for a child. People do care. That's nonsense that they don't. The reason you guys say that they don't is because they don't adopt socialism. You're like, oh my God, you don't take socialist values? Clearly you don't care about children. Clearly you don't care because you're not a socialist. I'm guessing I'm gonna guess with that haircut you're a socialist.
Don't see them supporting children in care. For some reason, they're usually against things like free school meals.
Who called it? Who called it? Who called it? Who has 2 thumbs and called it? This guy. Easy call. Because you don't support socialism. Then you hate children and you hate people, except the most charitable people in the world. You cannot beat it. The most charitable institution in the world is a Catholic Church. It just is. But you don't support socialism. You don't support us taking money from everybody we want to take it from and giving it to the people that we want to give it to. So therefore you hate children. My God. And then the smug smile.
All of the many children in poverty, going hungry, no clean clothes. They don't seem to care about any of that shit. They only care about the fetuses for whatever reason. Twisting the narrative so that it's this idea of, oh, the only people who get abortions are people who are like lazy and don't care and just use their bodies, which are gifts from God, in a way that we don't like. That
yes
is such a horrible emotional tactic.
It's true, though.
That is actually, in real life, preventing lots of women from easily and affordably affording the medical treatment that is necessary to
Super based. Let's stop all the mothers from killing their babies. You imagine looking at people and thinking you're the good guy for saying that, hey, you won't let us kill our babies? You monster. You monster. You won't let me kill my child. You monster. You terrible human being. Why won't you let me murder my child in the womb? And remember, the definition of child is a young human being below the age of puberty or below the legal age of majority. And by definition, a fetus is a human being and it's young, so it is a child. Why won't you let me kill it?
keep them alive. So I don't really care for that argument, thank you.
Yeah, well, we don't care for your argument that you want to justify killing babies. You disgusting human being.
Want to have fun without consequences, therefore I'll kill my kids.
Fuck you, and
Super based.
especially the human who's fisting you right now. That is an emotion.
Yeah. I mean, is he wrong though? Like, you're so upset. You're so angry.
Without consequences, therefore I'll kill my kids.
Fuck you, and especially the human who's fisting you right now. That is an emotionally driven argument that will kill women.
But how is it wrong? How is it wrong? Like, if you all stop having sex, you don't need abortion. Let's just concede this. Let's concede this point. In all cases of grape, we allow abortion. Now, we can argue about how you would discover that. Let's say we have this like really foolproof system of discovering whether or not somebody is grape. We can argue later about like what is the exact system in which we would discover if somebody is graped or not. But let's say we figure out that system. In all cases of grape, we say abortion's okay. All cases you could do that. But every other case it's a no. I guarantee you're not going to take that deal. You're not taking that deal. You know why? Because the ding dong fallacy. Y'all honor sex more than you honor human life. Y'all fancy an orgasm more than you fancy keeping your child alive. Y'all are sick human beings, sick monsters, terrible, terrible people. Yeah, I'm going to kill my child so that way I can just have this big old orgasm. That's you. That's you. If I'm wrong, take the deal. Take the deal. Take the deal. Prove us wrong. Say you take the deal that in all cases of grape, we allow it. Abortion is allowed. But in every other case, it is not allowed. It is illegal. Because the only way to stop, at that point, the only way to stop all these imaginary health issues that you brought up would be to stop having sex. Oh my God, how dare you? How dare you tell us to stop having sex? Oh my God, but is that dangerous, bro? You know what's really fun? Skydiving. You know what's something I'm probably never going to do? Skydiving. Because the risk that just does not, to me, is not worth the reward. I used to think the biblical story about splitting a baby in half was fake, then abortion. You're not wrong, bro. You're not wrong.
Women that need abortions for medical reasons
Or like very few.
such a afterthought to these people. They'd much rather present it as like, oh, women are just shitty and just lazy and they're killing kids because they're
But they are. You haven't refuted it. You are. You're lazy and killing kids because you prefer sex.
so lazy. And that's the kind of rhetoric, the emotional rhetoric, manipulative nonsense
It's not manipulation if it's a fact. It'd only be manipulative if it wasn't a fact. But it is a fact. So therefore it's not manipulative.
that appeals to people and stops women getting medical care. And it doesn't matter to you because you're
It's not medical care.
a man and you know you'll never have to get an abortion. Let's move on.
Oh, hold on. Baby, where is my wife? I'll call you.
What do you want?
Wow. This woman on the internet says that the only reason we're anti-abortion is because we don't have wombs and we'll never have to carry a child. You have a womb. Do you want to give insight on that?
I don't see why that gives me any right to murder somebody.
But what about your health care?
It's not going to do anything to me.
But your health care, baby.
It's not going to affect my health.
But your health care, baby. What about your health care in your womb?
Maybe if people got off the couch and stopped eating cookies all day, it wouldn't be such a problem.
Wow. Well, you just hate women, don't you?
No, I hate lazy people.
Oh, but obviously they'd need it for health care, baby. Why
You know what else they need for healthcare?
What?
Like a gym. Maybe some fruits and veggies.
Okay, I love you. Bye.
Love you.
I keep telling y'all I'm the nice one. I keep telling y'all.
On before I fucking bust a blood vessel.
So let's see what you think Jesus says.
But the Bible says God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. The Bible defines life as beginning at first.
Yeah, he was also 30-some years old when that happened. Bible does not say it begins at that point. You look at things like Jeremiah, where it says that life was formed in the womb. You can also look at the Gospel of Luke, where John literally jumps for joy in the womb because Jesus was in the womb. Right? Like, how does something jump for joy if it doesn't have life?
First breath, not conception.
That was his conception because he was made from dirt.
So funny to be really aggressive in your claim that God made man from dirt. God made Adam, the first man, from dirt. So that trumps your argument. Sounds like a really grown-up, well-thought-out, sensible belief and not the mad indoctrination of a cult.
Jeremiah, before
that
you
was
were
just
in
an
your
ad
mother's
hoc.
womb, I knew you. How can God know someone that doesn't exist?
To reiterate a point I made earlier, why does God let any child in utero, if that's what you want to call them, why does he let any child in that state die? If he
It's
knows...
just whataboutism. What if? It's not an actual argument or a question. You're just bringing up more questions. It's not an argument or a premise. You're just bringing up more questions.
If he's breathed life into them, why does he let them perish? Why does he let children die immediately after they're born? Surely
Because he wants to. That doesn't disprove anything.
this design of God's is utterly shit. If even the
It doesn't prove any. Like, you just bringing up questions doesn't prove anything. It's not. Do people know how arguments work? Unless you're applying the Socratic method, but you're not applying the Socratic method. You're not leading into a conclusion.
fetus is that important to God, why is he causing them to perish before they even get to become a person?
But you know what? In the 21st century, we shouldn't be using the Bible to determine when life begins.
Because somehow God is out of date? Really?
No, because the Bible is a collection of texts by different human beings across history. It's theological, it's spiritual. Some of that is beautiful. If it contradicts with mainstream science, if it contradicts with modern ethics, then the only
Contradicts with modern ethics. So if it contradicts my personal preferences, then it's wrong? Because that's all modern ethics is your personal preferences. It's what you like. Unless you can show me where this modern ethic is. Where is it? How do we hold it? It's just your preference.
responsible thing to do is say, okay, this ancient text is out of date.
What does that mean, out of date? What does that actually mean? Because they believed it yesterday, I believe it today, it's more correct? Like, is that the logical conclusion? So if yesterday I thought loving my wife was a good thing, but today I think beating her is a good thing, does that mean I'm more correct today? Because that was out of date? Like, what does that mean?
Ancient text written and translated and retranslated by human beings is not appropriate for our modern society.
Why not?
That is a rational way to behave.
Why is that rational? You gave no rational argument. You just said it old, we not old, so therefore it not good. What?
Pretending that the Bible, and I bet you the specific version of the Bible that Dinks believes is the true one is the King James Bible, not just my specific translation, but my specific canon, is the one true word of God from time immemorial. And therefore it can never be out of date. That's why I still stone my children in the town square when they're being disobedient. That's why I don't wear
We already answered this, so.
mixed fabrics or eat pork. That's why I regularly perform ritual sacrifices.
Right. So again, Acts 15 tells us, again, all these atheists scream, Christians never read the Bible. Acts 15 literally tells us, who are the Gentiles, what we have to hold to in the law. And it's don't drink blood and something else. There's one other thing. I forget what it is. I probably checked that, considering there's only 2 laws I'm supposed to hold to in the Mosaic Law. But for Gentiles, we were only told to do those 2 things. That's in the scripture. But it's like, oh, you ignore all these things. No, that was for the Israelites. We're not Israelites. We're Gentiles. And we were told only to do these 2 things out of those laws. That's the only thing that was meant to be important to us. Don't eat sacrificed meats. That's right. Don't eat meat sacrificed to other gods. So don't drink blood. Don't eat meat sacrificed to other gods. The only 2 commandments for the Gentiles. Outside of that, we are to follow the new commandments of Christ, which is actually more. There's 1,053 commandments from Christ. That is for the Gentiles. So like the fact that they just bring up the Mosaic Law and you don't follow the Mosaic Law, you hypocritical Christians, because we were told not to.
Because God's word never goes out of date. With the greatest respect to my pleasant and responsible and ethical Christian friends, you can't...
Yeah, if there's pig blood and black pudding, no, I'm sorry, you can't eat it. You're to abstain from blood. That's actually one of those things that like Dan McClellan brought up that Christians don't ultimately follow, is like, oh, they're not supposed to eat blood. And I was like, well, no, we're not supposed to eat blood. And a lot of Christians don't know that, because like I remember one time when I was on the carnivore diet, I was trying to get like more nutrients, and I don't recommend the carnivore diet, to be honest. I think that was kind of silly when I did that. But I was trying to get more nutrients, so I was going to eat liver, and then I wasn't sure if liver had blood in it, and I'm like, well, I can't do that because I'm a Christian. And then the guy went and asked his Christian friend, was like, my Christian buddy says that you can eat blood, and he eats blood, and that's no problem. I'm like, yeah, most Christians haven't read the scripture, don't know that, but yeah, it says we are to abstain for blood because that is where the life is.
Be a Christian without cherry picking, because the Bible contradicts itself. You literally can't be a Christian without cherry picking. So
Yes, you can.
to argue that you're cherry picking the wrong things because the bits that you're cherry picking are to protect human beings and to be
No,
ethical,
you have to read all of it within its context.
whereas mine are more arbitrary to promote a right-wing patriarchal agenda. That's what it is. And it's dishonest to pretend otherwise. You either acknowledge that these are very old texts, at least written down, even if they're inspired by God, at least written down and translated and retranslated by
Not translated and retranslated, just translated. We have the original language.
human beings. And therefore, if they contradict mainstream modern ethical thinking,
Mainstream modern ethical thinking is just your preferences. And again, preferences change it all the time. So if your argument is it was right yesterday, or it's less wrong because it was yesterday, that's a silly argument. That's a silly argument. Everything that they believed yesterday is more wrong than what we believe today is stupid.
then they should change. Then you should consider reinterpreting it. Part of Jewish scholarship, part of mainstream Jewish scholarship is continually re-examining and reassessing and reinterpreting biblical canon. Part of being a
Yeah, that is a very common. That's not modern Jew. That goes all the way back, right? They did that since the beginning. That is midrash.
conservative Christian, particularly an American conservative Christian, is about cherry-picking specifically the parts of the Bible that reinforce whatever the current political football is. We're against abortion right now, so the Bible says that abortion is not allowed.
Again, we just got to look at this. The Bible condemns the death of innocent persons. Fetuses are innocent persons. The Bible condemns the death of fetuses. I should actually add the caveat in there. The Bible condemns humans who shed the life of innocent persons. Fetuses are innocent persons. The Bible condemns the shedding of, you get it. Because somebody's going to make the argument, but God killed the babies. Well, okay, even if we grant that argument, right, God still condemns us. We should not shed innocent blood.
Because the Bible isn't a scientific book.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Yep, you just tried to use it as one.
Were you not fucking listening? He said, the Bible says this, but we shouldn't be using the Bible to make policy decisions anyway. The thing Dinks just said
don't
doesn't
have
make sense.
Grammarly.
It's like, again, he's either stupid or isn't
I don't
listening.
have Grammarly. I don't hide my imperfections. I don't know how to spell. I'm bad at spelling. I'm bad at words. I'm probably dyslexic. And I just own it. Let people call me out on those things.
Or is deliberately deceptive.
They're canceling us.
Oh, no, you got the tone, totally wrong. They're canceling us. How cute.
Dinks started this video by saying, I'm not here to defend MAGA. The way he was just talking, Dinks is totally MAGA.
Whoever hates correction is stupid.
I've never wanted to say did.
It's totally MAGA.
Whoever hates
It's true. Yeah.
correction is stupid.
I've never wanted to say ditto so much in my life.
You a big Pokemon fan? That isn't even the correct... Okay, me too, but the internet really is a forum for any idiot to have a following. I am aware that that benefits me, but still, that's not the correct use of ditto. The correct use of ditto is for Pokemon breeding purposes. Dinks is trying to say, the same to you, and that's not what ditto means.
Hey, the Bible said it, not me.
That's a really weird contention to bring up against Dinks. He improperly used the word ditto. That is a really strange contention to bring up against somebody. That just feels like grasping at straws and doing everything in your power to make somebody look worse than they actually are.
Me, I'm just quoting scripture here.
Scripture that you don't believe is actually said by God or the people it claims to have been written by.
Well, it wasn't. So much evidence in support of that fact.
What evidence?
And the only evidence that the Bible was written by who it was claimed to be written by, which is most of the time, apart from the letters of Paul and stuff like that. Not all of the letters of Paul, because some of those weren't written by Paul either. But most of the books of the Bible that were attributed to certain people was done later by Christian scholars, being like, how can we make this a more compelling piece of doctrine? How can we make this a more valid part of the canon? Oh, well, it could have been written by this person who was close to Jesus,
So they picked Luke? You freaking idiot. Have you looked I'm sorry. Have you looked at any of the scholarship for authorship at all? Your argument is that they wanted to make it more theologically correct, so they picked a name of somebody who's close to Jesus. So they picked Luke or Mark. Those are the people that they're going to pick, not one of the 12 disciples. We actually know what happens when people make counterfeits. Those are the Gnostic texts where they try to give them names that are really close to Jesus. We know what the church fathers did when they didn't know. For Hebrews, they had no clue who wrote Hebrews. You know what they said? We don't know who wrote Hebrews. You know what they didn't do? Assign an arbitrary name to it to make it more authentic. They literally said, we don't know who wrote it. There's a writing of a church father throwing up his hands and says, we'll never know who wrote Hebrews. Because they were all trying to figure it out all the time. They couldn't figure it out. So they got mad and said, we give up. We don't know who wrote it. So why would you expect that they're just going to invent names and put it on to make it more theologically correct? The only argument that you could give that somebody invented a name for it was, I think it was Justin Martyr assigned the names, and then people just assumed that he was like very authentic, and then they just ran with it. That's like the only argument you can make against that. But outside of that, I think you're going to have a really uphill battle. Because for one, we don't have a single manuscript that doesn't have a name assigned to it where you'd expect. So like if we have a front page of a manuscript, it has a name assigned to it, and they never contradict each other. Yet we know what it looks like when we don't know what it looks like. Or sorry, we know what it looks like when they don't know who the authors are, because it has different names or it says anonymous or whatever. But every single one of like the Gospel of Matthew, where you'd expect to see a name, says the Gospel of Matthew. We also have a unanimous consensus amongst the church fathers who didn't live side by side with each other. They lived like thousands of miles apart from each other. And because they lived thousands of miles apart from each other, and they also had an agreement with it, shows that there was just like this, as it was growing, as the manuscripts were spreading around, that there was just unanimous consensus about who wrote it. And like you never see any contention. You never see anybody at all ever go like, hey, we don't know who wrote it, or hey, maybe it was this guy. Everybody's like, yeah, it was the earliest. I think one of the earliest writings says that it was the disciples and their followers. Well, guess what? John and Matthew are the disciples. Luke and Mark are their followers. That's what you would expect to see. Justin Martyr called the Gospel of Mark the Memoirs of Peter, which adds credibility to tradition that he was interpreted in Rome. Yeah, I mean, like Tim McGrew did a whole seminar on like original authorship names, and like it just is, if it was anything else in history, like as any other document in history, it'd be like closed. What do you call it? Closed cut case or whatever, where it's like it'd be settled. Like we'd all just agree that's the authors, but because it's the Bible, they have a different standard. So if you apply just the historical method, it would have been done. It would have been done. Because who is it? There's a guy where it's like it's even called like his name, but we never actually see his sign his name on it. And it's like, and nobody argues that he has the original authorship, but he never actually signed his name on it. I'm trying to remember what it is. But yeah, a lot of these things in history are like, we have less evidence for them having original authorship, but we don't contend on who the authors were for it. So you're just making shit up.
Or it could have been written by this person descended from the line of Adam.
But if the shoe fits.
Did you see that? He referenced a totally misogynistic fairy tale. I thought he knew better.
Shut the fuck up, Dinks. Don't be an asshole. Why is it that
You're also being an asshole.
So many of the like Christian apologists, online apologists that are clearly not qualified or clever enough to be real apologists, why is it that they're always...
What's the difference between an online apologist and a real apologist? Is there like can you go to apologist school? Like I know there's apologetic courses in college, but you can't get like a degree in being an apologist. What do you mean?
So dickish. Why are they always so fucking rude?
I'll tell you why. As somebody who's one of these internet apologists. Because when I came online and I wanted to start talking about Jesus, I was very, 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 very charitable with people. And the people who have been watching me since the beginning will vouch for that. I was very charitable. I listened to everybody. I heard their opinion. I validated their opinion. I kind of went with it. Was like, yeah, I believe this. You believe that. And I even had people say to me at the time, like, you know, if more Christians were like you, I would have followed Jesus. And the problem with that is I was very validating. And of course they would say that. Well, you're validating everything I say. Of course I'm going to follow you. You know what happens is that a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of atheists started attacking pretty hard making content, making videos, going on my lives, trying to take my acts of charity out of its context to school me or post a video about it. And eventually you have to kind of like hold your ground and learn how to fight, because that is what's happening. So most of these apologists probably go too far, and I've been known to do that, is because we're in a constant state of battle where people are constantly doing everything they can to make everything that we believe in sound like this nonsensical, ridiculous fairy tale, when people don't even really understand or comprehend what we believe in. And most of it comes from people like, I grew up Christian, so I know. It's like, you can't project the way you feel upon somebody else. So yeah, generally they get a little bit dickish because the entire internet is being dicks to them constantly. But granted, that is just being on the internet. Like, you probably have so many people being dicks to you constantly too. And that's probably why you're a little bit dickish. Like, let's be honest, you were a dick in this video. And fair is fair. We're all dicks. Dicks. We're all dicks. We're all assholes. It's part of being on the internet. Grow up.
I'm going to be facetious about misogyny because the joke is that I don't believe misogyny is real or matters. Ha ha ha. Like, what? Just like sitting there and being like, I'm an asshole. Ha 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 ha. You're not really endearing me to Christianity, Dinks, by being an asshole.
You're not endearing me to atheism by being an asshole. That's such a manipulative tactic that people use all the time too, is like, I'm not going to be a Christian because you're an ass. Like, you're trying to tell me that I just caused you to go to hell. I'm not responsible for you going to hell. That's not my fault. That's on you. I'm not gonna take that burden and say I was the reason that you didn't make it. That's on you. That's between you and God. All I can do is tell you the gospel. And if you think I'm too much of a dick to follow the gospel, that's your problem, not mine.
Should always be receptive to new information, and if we discover that something we are saying or doing is causing harm to other people, then we should absolutely stop saying or doing those things that are
like killing babies in the womb,
causing harm.
So you would never be a weightlifter then, because you literally have to tear your cells apart in order to grow muscles. You certainly would never be in the military because they tear down who you are and build you into a...
What fucking weird, like, word play? Like, what is that? This doesn't have anything to do with his point. It's like, but, you know, in the military, they tear you down and build you back up, so you'd never do that, huh? Checkmate. Doesn't have any... That's not even nearly a theological argument. That's not even a gotcha, because it doesn't make any sense.
It does make sense. Right? You're not offering the principle of charity here. He's basically saying that the things he says is hurtful and it causes harm because it disagrees with your preference, so you don't like it. But ultimately, it drives you to what is the greatest good that could be, which is being in alignment with God.
The bar is so low for Christian apologetics on YouTube. It is really so low. Okay, I am getting so sick and tired.
That's TikTok. He's on TikTok. I'm pretty sure you responded to a TikTok video. I could be wrong about that, though.
Tired of these absolutely fucking dog shit arguments, which are not arguments, which a toddler could make and probably better, and be less rude about. So we're going to take a look at one more short video for my personal satisfaction, and then we're done with Dinks.
We are the Borg. I know very well who you are. Stand down your weapons.
How dare
Only person whiter than me.
you? How dare you? Okay, I have no legitimate intellectual or philosophical argument here. This is straight up just when you get annoyed because somebody whose views you think are really abhorrent likes the same TV show as you. Clearly this person likes Star Trek Voyager and they're having fun with it in a short. That makes me mad, and I'm aware that that's unfair of me. However, I will take this opportunity to say, screw you for placing the atheists as the Borg hive mind. 2, as if a hateful Christian wannabe apologist would be the ECH. The Doctor would never. He is a rational, evidence-based scientist, okay? He's a medical professional. I guarantee you the Doctor would not be anti-abortion, for a start. The Federation is meant to be this futuristic, utopian
I don't watch Star Trek. I'm not a nerd, so...
society, and a big part of that is the fact that it is secular. It is secular, science and exploration based, and is very specifically considerate of other people's religious beliefs. You would not find a member...
Are you considerate of other people's religious beliefs? What about Islamic's religious belief to sleep with children? That's in the Quran, and it's like a good thing that you can do it. It's literally a word of God, not a prescriptive or descriptive art. It's literally prescriptive, and it's for all people all time. You respect that religious belief? This whole idea is secular. It's like, we tolerate, everybody can have their own religious. No, you don't. You say everybody can have their religious belief as long as they conform to the secular beliefs. Okay, well, I'll say this to you. You can have your secular belief as long as you conform to the Christian belief. Don't push your secularism on me. Stop pushing your secularism down my throat.
You know what's a subject I just refuse to let die? It's Charlie Kirk, because the whole world showed us who they are when this terrible event happened. And we get to see some of that in this video here. So if you want to see somebody just completely fumble the ball when trying to argue against Charlie Kirk, click the video and we will see you over there. God bless.